Hello everyone, welcome back to the Empower Journal, a space to create the life you want to live. This is a podcast space where we explore stories of resilience, power, and impact. And yes, today we are going beyond the headlines. We're talking to the change makers and the quiet warrior today who are raising voices and showing us what real change looks like, child by child. Exactly. In India, the simple fact of being born a girl or a boy or a child with a non-conforming gender identity can alter the course of your entire life. This isn't just about poverty, it's about power, patriarchy, and deeply rooted beliefs that decide who deserves what. When we talk about child rights in India, the conversation often starts with and ends with fundraising. But behind every number is a real story, a real child, and a reality that rarely makes the headline. These are the stories you haven't heard but need to. And to help us uncover them, we are joined by Soha Moitra, Director of Programs and Head of North Operations at CRY, Child Rights and Youth. With over 3 decades of work at the intersection of gender and child rights, Soha isn't just an advocate, she is a force for change, I would say. Soha, it's such a honor to have you on the Empower Journal today. I can't tell you how privileged I feel right now. We have just scratched the surface in the intro, but I know your journey into this space has been anything but linear. Before we dive in, I would like to take a step back because I believe the why behind someone's work often tells us more than any bio ever could. What's the story behind your journey?
Thank you so much, Dev, for inviting me and Cry on this platform. It's our pleasure to come here and share my experiences while working with children, especially in the context of girl children. Okay, what brought me here? Okay, let me just give you an insight on this. Close to 3 decades of working, at the intersection of gender and social development has taught me something very fundamental, and which is when a girl stays in school, it doesn't change her life. It begins to unmake centuries of social inequality. And when the entire society comes together to support girls, we do more than ensure just that they stay in school. We open up spaces, multiple spaces, where girls are just not seen but heard, and they are just not protected but empowered. So, it's not just a welfare gesture, it is far beyond that. It's about gender justice imperative when it's rooted deeply and grounded into the gender rights and child rights intersection. And that, in my mind, it demands that we ask hard questions about whose dreams are we prioritizing and whose are we postponing. So yes, when a girl learns, she carries her entire village forward. But first, we must ensure that the village chooses to walk with her. And that, in my mind, is the essence of lasting change. And if we are serious about progress, justice, and inclusion, we must truly commit to make sure that every girl learns, leads, and lives her life with dignity. Because when a girl learns, a generation rises.
Now, it's a very powerful truth actually. It's about whose dreams get to exist. On that note, let's talk reality. And I got few numbers to ask you. In India, over 223 million children are under 18. Yet, more than 40% of adolescent girls drop out of school. And but 30% of rural boys are in child labor by 14. And trans children, many leave school long before they even counted because of the relentless bullying, I would say. Why is this still happening? And do you think, what will it take to truly change this?
Yeah, very right. And indeed, the numbers are very disappointing and they are real. To be able to do this in real space, I think we need gender responsive approach on the ground. And it really and that by gender responsive approach in child rights, it means that recognizing that the needs, risks, and opportunities for girls, boys, and gender diverse children are not the same. First, we have to recognize that. So, for example, girls in rural areas often miss school during menstruation because they don't have hygienic toilets, or they don't have a toilets with a door at the least. Boys may be pulled out of school to work in farms or garages because they are expected to earn all these, right? And transgender children face, nobody's even talking about transgender children for that matter. But these children are facing bullying on a daily basis, and it's so intense that they don't want to go to the school. So can we recognize these issues and then design our programs and see how we can solution them? Because a gender responsive framework is the key to bring about these changes. And without this lens, we run the risk of, designing neutral policies. That serves no one well, actually. Gender is very crucial filter through which childhood is experienced in India. And we have to recognize it to design the solutions accordingly.
That's tough to hear, but like you said, change is possible. You spoke about looking beyond the numbers, Soha. So that makes me think of a term we hear so often. So when you spoke about the gender responsive, in real everyday work, and like how do we change the approach? Because if gender shapes childhood so profoundly, then it's clear the roots of inequality go far beyond just then economics or the access to resources. Why is the starting line itself is so unequal?
Yes, that's true. Let me give you an example of this girl whom I have met just a couple of months back in Jodhpur, Rajasthan. Her name is Sugna. She was married at the age of 4. Oh. She didn't know even what does a marriage mean, right? But she was trapped into the tradition thereafter. So growing up in a small village of Rajasthan where girls' dreams rarely took flight, she quietly held on to one of her own to study and to grow and to be free. But it was not easy. Like you said, right? The patriarchy is so deep-seated, right? From this stage of 4 when she was married off, but she wanted to study and there was no school nearby. No support for girls beyond class 8. So Sugna's journey was far from easy. One silver line was that her parents were giving her support and they somehow managed that some transport so she could go to study some 5 kilometers away. And when the school, offered only one stream, which was science, which was not her interest at all. But she never came back complaining, thinking that if she will complain this, she'll be, pushed to drop out. So she took science and she carried on and she studied against all odds. And remember, her life didn't slow down here because she had to cook, she had to clean, all the gender roles she had to play, work on farms, followed every custom expected from a married woman as she grew up. But inside her, that spirit burned bright, And when she faced deception during her first job attempt, because it was very rare for a girl to go out and start working, and that too a married girl, and she got married along with her elder sister.
Oh, okay.
So her elder sister must be 12, but they wanted to concise their expenditure. So they said, okay, let's marry off both the girls so that, we don't have much expenditure on 2 marriages.
Oh.
So it was 4 indeed.
All right. That's what it you, right? Like, it's not about what's written in the law.
Yes, absolutely. And this girl fought it. Okay. At every stage, she managed to study. She managed to take up a job. She managed to fight the inner patriarchal forces before and after marriage. She's a child rights champion in her community. She's influencing many girls like her not to give up their dreams and keep continuing studies and balance all the aspects of life and work, more importantly. Be economically independent.
See, Sugna's story isn't rare, and that's why exactly it can't be ignored. Like all the every little decisions at home, like every single day is shaping a child's future.
Absolutely.
Listening to Sugna's story, it's clear that change can't come just from one place. Not the school alone, the government, not even the family alone. It really does take an entire ecosystem to protect and nurture a child. And Cry has been working in that space for decades now. So, Soha, can you walk us through how this It Takes a Village approach actually works in practice?
So yes, very rightly, we believe in it takes a village to raise a child very firmly. And for us, this means a pattern that can be best visualized with I'll just explain you, just visualize a concentric circle diagram. Of course, in the center will be that child, Asugna, right? And the first center of influence for that child will be denoted by the family, with the second denotes all the possible stakeholders, duty bearers immediately surrounding her, like community members, teachers, Anganwadi workers, Asha workers. And the next and the largest and the bigger circle denotes the larger system about society, administration at all levels, whether it's panchayat, block, union levels, and the policymakers and the judiciary. So we at CRY penetrate all these circles to reach the child, so the child is given her entitled rights. Just to give you an idea, a deeper idea on how it does come together actually. So, we launch various campaigns, issue-based campaigns. So 2024, we launched a education related, especially in context of girl child, a campaign called Puri Padhai Desh Ki Bhalai, with a focus especially on girl child education. As it is evident from the name, the core message was that if the nation will only grow when you make sure that our daughters, every single one of them, complete school education. And that was the simple messaging behind this campaign. And what we did was amplify this campaign across all the 20 states where CRY works. The campaign was promoted, especially with the focus of enrolling and retaining girl child in primary, upper primary, and secondary levels, essentially till 12th. And by bridging gender disparities and building consensus around the completion, because there are so many barriers, right? Class 12, the barrier starts from pushing the child to the school, and then getting the teacher in the school, and then seeing the toilets are in place when the child, because the statistics also is telling us that as the girl child is growing, especially attains puberty, there's the highest dropout, because you don't have either enough toilets or safe boundary walls or the transport to go to the school. So we ensured that all these issues are amplified. All of them joined this campaign, and there were many changes. There were many boundaries were built. The toilets came to place. The transport arrangements were discussed. So we saw the strength of the fact that when all these circles converge, all the stakeholders come, no matter how complex is the issue, it starts looking and seeming simpler.
That's an amazing approach actually. But tell me something, on paper, India has some strong laws and policies for kids, the children, from right to education or for protection acts. But somewhere between the policy document and the reality, the child's reality, impact fades. So why do you see such huge gap, and what opportunities are we still missing to truly protect every child's right?
See, talking about policies, policies actually don't function in vacuum, right? They are shaped by judiciary, they are shaped by the society, what society is actually reinforcing. Actually, we are a country where the policies are beautifully designed. The biggest problem is in the implementation of these schemes.
Right.
We are a country where we can say proudly that we have the largest scheme, which is ICDS scheme in the world. But is it reaching to the last mile child? Are there implementation issues? Yes. Other examples are Beti Bachao, Beti Padhao, right? Big one. Launched to address the declining sex issues, and also raise a lot of awareness. But over 80% of its budget has been spent on media campaigns, right? Now, KGBV, there is another Kasturba Gandhi Balika Vidyalaya, for example. There is a beautiful scheme again, which gives which gives the opportunity to the girls to go to residential schools for the marginalized children. But it's underfunded. Very impactful one, but underfunded. Sabla, very well-known scheme aimed at life skills and nutrition for adolescent girls, but there is a huge problem in implementation because it has been held by multiple departments and it's nobody's baby, and the interdepartmental coordination failed. And FHS 5 data has shown that nearly 1 in 3 adolescent girls in India is anemic. Yet, adolescent boys and trans children are rarely addressed in health schemes. Girls are still identified. Boys and trans children are not even identified. So, just to sum up this response, Dave, I think without gender disaggregated data and without understanding how the intersectionality of caste, disability, gender, class, rurality, or that rural context, policies are at risk of being generic and ineffective.
All right. So, on that note, can we highlight some of the ignored realities, because the schemes which you're talking about seems to have a larger bandwidth but failed in reality?
If you have toilets in school, you ensure the girls that yes, your privacy is maintained and you have responses to menstrual hygiene. See the way the dropout decreases. If we gender sensitize training for teachers in Anganwadis, see the response of our children in the Anganwadis. We can't keep talking about gender equality only with girls, right? The boys need to come into this game. The children, as they grow as adolescents, they need to be shown some direction to pick up careers. It's all about freeing boys from toxic masculinity, and that's where the gender justice paradigm comes alive.
All right. So just to make it little positive, in your years with Scry, what is that one moment that made you feel, yes, this is why I do this work?
A very recent case where this young woman working in a local bricklin in a Mushahar village. Mushahar is the last mile community in our country. Everybody rejects that on various grounds of discrimination in Varanasi. She was working in this bricklin, and she was narrating this to me one day that, one day she was telling me that one day when I took a break to feed my newborn, the supervisor shouted at me, asking her to return to work immediately. And she said I was furious, but somehow managed to keep my voice low and firm. She was, of course, saying all this in Hindi. And she said that, I kind of told him that brick making can wait, but my baby cannot. And this statement coming from a very, very subjugated woman for years, who has stood against an employer, who generally is of the upper caste, a man, saying that, you know what? My baby is first, and I'm evoking my agency of being a mother, a woman, and saying no to that employer, says so much about how far we have come from a place where we used to have these groups where women would not even come speak up.
Lovely. Soha, thank you so much for that lovely experience. The change was felt with that incident. So Soha, what's your final call to do action for our listeners?
Okay, the final request and appeal I would like to place is to please join our movement of child rights. Join and be part of this cause. You can volunteer, you can donate, and please log into our website www.cry.org, and you'll get all the details, and we would be more than happy to make you members of this movement.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Soha. So with this, we kind of wrapping up our segment 1. So we have covered some really powerful and heavy truths today. But before we close, let's end on a lighter note, yet still meaningful. So I'm going to throw you few quick questions your way, like no overthinking, just the first thing that comes to your mind. Ready?
Sure.
So let's start simple. If you had to capture all of your childhood in just one word.
Happy.
Love that. It's amazing like how one word can carry whole world of meaning. Okay. The most underrated change we can make for children in India?
Giving them all what it takes to be creative and happy.
Okay. So true actually.
Absolutely.
Right. One stereotype about girls you wish you could erase forever.
The clothes, the notions on the clothes. You should not be wearing this, that, and the other because that kind of attracts the other gender.
I can't agree more with you. If only I have a hit delete button on for good. Okay, one small act like anyone listening can do today for child rights.
Be curious about child rights. Ask questions about where all are the areas where the child rights are not being given to the average child in our country.
Yeah, simple, doable, and it makes a lot of difference, real differences. So, one book or film that shaped the way you see the world.
The recent book, The Personal is Political by Aruna Roy, is also a big, it's a very big influence on my life currently.
Such a powerful pick. So, okay, here's the last question. One thing you believed as a child that still guides you today.
Curiosity.
Right. That's beautiful. Thank you so much.
We should be thankful. Thank you so much.
Today you reminded us raising children isn't charity, it's a nation building, and when a girl learns, again, a generation rises.
Absolutely.
So, people, if this conversation sparks something in you, share it. Start a conversation in your home, your school, your workplace. Subscribe to the Empowered Journal and do not forget to check into the CRY website. And wherever you get your podcast, please tune into and explore our other episodes on leadership, equality, and change making. I'm your host, Dev, and this is Empower Journal. Until next time, stay curious, stay compassionate, and keep raising your voice. Nandri!